is big news. My main question is, when do you think Notre Dame and Oregon are going to leave to join the Big Ten?
Well, I don't think Notre Dame necessarily thinks it has to move off its dime. Now, I mean, there will be a lot of speculation that it will just be folded into the Big Ten, but like Notre Dame is Notre Dame. It is unique in all of this, and Notre Dame prides itself on its independence and not being tied or tethered into anything else. I don't think we should assume that Notre Dame's going to just naturally be assumed into the Big Ten. I do think that Oregon, is definitely. I think the Pac-12 is dead. That's my initial inclination, because again, there's no reason for the Pac. Well, it's not likely that the Pac-12 and the Big 12 are going to merge, because the institutional and cultural fits are just so incongruent between those two conferences. I think just the Big 10 is going to get a mixture of schools from both conferences, and the SEC is going to get some Big 12 schools and a number of ACC schools. That's my read.
I think also to add to the Notre Dame part of it, while I understand most of the country hates Notre Dame, they don't like the arrogance, they don't like whatever. Look, I've been there for games. It is all of that when you're there. It really is. Deserves its place in college football history. Notre Dame just re-upped its contract with NBC. Notre Dame doesn't want to share that with 12 other conference partners. When they have it all to themselves, there's no upside for Notre Dame doing it. There is also the Notre Dame legacy. And I realize, well, at one point I'm talking about this is the new world of college football. There are enough people in the Notre Dame legacy who remember when they wanted to join the Big Ten and were turned down because the Big Ten did not want a Catholic school. So there's a little bit of Notre Dame for another decade or so is going to be saying, sticking in your ear, you need us more than we need you.
Let me also make the point, Tony, on the heels of what you said. Yeah, if Notre Dame didn't want to split the revenue pie in a 14-team or 12-team conference, definitely not going to split the revenue pie in a 20-team conference, right?
No, I agree.
So, yeah, I think Notre Dame's going to stay independent.
I agree.
Okay, now do you think we're going to an NFL style where we get an AFC versus NFC type of situation in the future?
I do think that this offers college football a chance to reimagine how it schedules. I think that's an interesting piece of all this. One thing is, I'm big on flex scheduling, that you get to play, just one flex scheduled game every year, like in the middle of November. You play the first 6-7 weeks of the season, you see which teams are good, and then ESPN can just say middle of October, okay, and we have these prearranged dates in mid-November, where what are set aside for flex games. I think you get an even better opportunity to do that. I also think that the conference championship game, with having these, if you do have mega conferences, the idea of having a conference championship game, that goes away. You should just have conference championship Saturday, that first Saturday in December. Everybody should be playing a game now, from the various conferences. You have so many more opportunities to have, team number 1 in the SEC play team number 2 in the Big Ten, vice versa, flip it around. You're not going to have a Pac-12 championship game. Like, even if the Pac-12 survives, who cares now under this reimagined chessboard? You should just have basically kind of a playoff play-in round with that conference championship Saturday, that conference championship weekend. So I also think that this deals a real blow to the conference championship games as we know it. Many things to kind of wrap your head around here.
Which is ironic with the conference championship game issues, especially if you look at the Pac-12, when George Kliavkoff brought it to his home city of Las Vegas. And, we've all been convinced, at least I have, most people I know, that the Pac-12 headquarters were going to move to Vegas at some point because the basketball championship was there, the football championship. Kliavkoff still lives there. It's interesting, though. You use the word reimagine. And I was talking to someone earlier on another show that was part of the hiring of Kliavkoff, someone who was not an insider. It was part of the hiring of Brett Yormark to run the Big 12, not a college football insider, because everything is evolving, everything is changing. The hiring someone who spent every time a conference commissioner's job opens up, everyone is talking Oliver Luck. And certainly it would have made sense for the Big 12. But I think that these conferences wanted to start looking at, we need to look at business. We need to look at the business of college football, not just college football. It's ironic then that, about 6 hours after I make that comment, the Pac-12 is blowing up on Kliavkoff's watch. And I agree, it's not his fault, but it's going to be his legacy nonetheless.
Hey, the real MVP. Appreciate you stopping by, man. We're going to get to some other calls. Thanks, man.
No problem, Mark.
Next up, we got Tim on the line. Tim, a USC guy, as Matt well knows. Tim, how are you taking this?
I'm taking it great. I'm loving it.
Okay.
Actually, you didn't notice I'm actually here live in Indianapolis. Actually, just outside Indianapolis, and a Meyer pulled over. You guys probably didn't know that I was actually a part of this whole process, so to make sure it was okay.
Indianapolis, the site of a future USC conference championship game, maybe.
I was waiting for that.
Yeah, you don't see Meyer in Southern California very often. No, I just wanted to pull over because I thought this might happen eventually, but I did not think it would happen this quickly. I thought we'd probably take more than just UCLA with us. And I was kind of hoping that we'd get maybe Oregon and Washington as well. But I wrote in the chat, I have a couple words for you guys. Midwest O-linemen. I cannot wait to recruit up in the Midwest because that was our missing piece. Now we're going to have a lot. And I think that we're going to have a lot of games in November. I mean, I know there's a good advantage for the Midwest schools, but I think a lot of rich alumni in Illinois and Michigan and Ohio are going to want to be somewhere in California in November instead of sitting out in the Midwest. So again, I think that might be an incentive for us to get our nice warm games later in the year. But my battery's about to die, and I'm getting back on the road. I'm still about an hour out of Chicago. But
yeah,
I'll
see, Big Ten teams going to Southern California in November. It's basically going to replace the Rose Bowl, basically.
Well, now they get to play the Rose Bowl every year, some of these teams, so that'd be great for them. So, all right, guys, thank you so much. I'm excited. I'll keep listening on the way up.
Appreciate it, Tim.
It's interesting talking about recruiting. One of the things USC has historically done well, and I don't know if this will really change it, going to the point of, half of your games being somewhere in the Midwest, regardless of, when and where you're playing them. So one of the things USC has traditionally done well is recruit the Polynesian players, the Samoans, the kids from the islands, who, you move to Southern California, it's all good. You look at the schedule and, I keep using this example, you're playing Rutgers in, October. Wow. That's a harder sell to make, frankly.
Because when you're pulling two all the way across the country, this is different geographically and logistically than what the SEC is contending with, where you can say, okay, now we just have this really gangly big conference, but they're in contiguous states, so we can separate them into pods. And sure, Missouri's going to have to go to Georgia. Well, they already do. Bad example. Oklahoma's going to have to run to South Carolina, but we can do that infrequently because we can section off the conference geographically. But when it's only USC and UCLA and they're going all the way across the country for everything.
You also look to that point, you look at what is, and I think Matt brought this up before, is, looking at, taking guesses at what's next, because trying to be educated about it is, an absurdity. Takes a certain amount of hubris to think that, we all know what's coming next. But if you look at, the raid that's going to happen on the ACC, at the next stop, you look at Clemson going to the SEC. You look at North Carolina, maybe, whomever, Miami, Florida State. So again, to your point, Mark, it still at least keeps up that regional part of it, even though you've had to expand to, Texas and Oklahoma to have your conference footprint. Yeah. It's still, at least you can look at a map and see the configuration and the alignment of it.
And it keeps the travel strain infrequent.
Mm-hmm.
You divide the conference in such a way that you make those trips infrequent versus USC, UCLA. They're on an island.
Right. No matter what you're doing, it doesn't take that much effort to get Ole Miss down to College Station. It's not that big a deal. It really isn't,
Sure.
or Texas to, get out to, to Alabama or, whatever, in Baton Rouge, whatever you want. It's not that big of a deal as compared to the model we're talking about, which is, again, then we leap to, you take some more teams, whether it's Oregon, Washington, whomever else. And you start to enlarge. Again, I don't like it, but it is what it is. There's no point in me, being Don Quixote and tilting at windmills.
Hey, Tony, so you're in ACC country.
I am.
A thought occurred to me just as I listened to you talk. It occurs to me that, and remember, Jim Delaney wanted North Carolina and Duke in the Big Ten. So it seems to me actually that North Carolina and Duke, if we're thinking about mega conferences and realignment, North Carolina and Duke probably are more likely to go to the Big Ten than the SEC.
I would say definitely Duke, and we're going to chalk that up to the academic proclivities of Duke and a better fit in the end. I'm not slamming anyone in the SEC, so don't anyone get. I don't want any Mark's fans getting upset.
Just plotting out the politics,
right? Here. Exactly. Duke is a logical fit in the Big Ten. North Carolina, maybe. You're going to get a bunch of schools in the ACC. And I will tell you, being out here, and while I was making phone calls, I was on a local radio show out here for a short spell as I was, breaking speed laws, trying to get here to do Mark's show. Jim Phillips is taking a real beating out here because the ACC TV contract is abysmal. And you didn't step up. You didn't keep your promise to make this, a real player. Look, the ACC needs Clemson to be good, to be that top level conference. We saw what happened last year with Pitt and Wake Forest in the conference championship game, and 2/3 of the country ignored it. It was a pretty good game with some very good talent, but it wasn't Clemson. So the ACC's got some real challenges out here, and I will tell you from the locals out here, Jim Phillips is the one taking the beating.
Duke actually, based on my evaluation of that new ACC schedule, got the best.
Yeah, they did.
The 3 selections for the primary opponents.
They got they got logical ones. They basically don't ever have to leave Tobacco Road.
No, they don't.